take the North and never give it back.
So that's a good pick. You get the corner. I got to go bold, right? I got to go bold for this.
Yeah, she's got some nice long
Welcome
hair.
back to the Unbearable Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Brad Barron. Make sure to like and subscribe if you are out there on YouTube, and also rate the show 5 stars everywhere that you get your podcast. We got our data deep dive today. We're going to be breaking down some big, deep stats about the Chicago Bears. Now, this came out a little day later than expected, had some stuff that popped up, but we have the stats. We have all the stuff that you have come to know and love with this show. And also, I was able to watch some of the tape, which we have some cool all 22 stuff to look out for next week. So if you haven't subscribed, welcome to the show. We have some awesome stuff for you. So let's get right into this. Now, last week we started out with the top grades and the worst grades from PFF, but we're going to kind of change it up a little bit because I want to kind of start out rather than that, but really kind of break down more of what the Bears did and also kind of just the overall rankings of the Bears when it comes down to next stats. Because also, if this is your first time listening or watching, we go through all the stats. We're going through all advanced metrics, not just receiving yards, actually not at all receiving yards or anything like that, but the deep dive advanced analytics. So let's just talk a little bit about last game. Now, we had 2.9 yards per play, which was slightly better than last game because obviously in week 1, we didn't get, we hardly got over, we didn't even get over 150 yards, but also the big reason, our third down efficiency was up from 15% to 47%. But even then, our EPA, so expected points added, negative 0.347 per play. Terrible. It was even worse than the week before. So even though we were moving the ball, it kind of echoes that things just weren't looking good. So metrics back that up. But also when you look at the overall rankings for the Chicago Bears, you see us flying down boards. So with the PFF grade, so overall, PFF had us 8th last week when it came down to PFF grades. We're all the way down to 20. And DVOA dropped us 6 spots to 24. ESPN's efficiency metrics has us at 16, so right in the middle. Way to go. And FPI has us at 21. They actually moved us up. So I don't know why, but cool. But then next, when we get into the offense, everybody brought us down. 30 for PFF, 31 for DVOA, 30 for efficiency, and 29 for FPI. So it echoes what we're seeing out there. We're one of the worst offenses, and now all the metrics are backing us up, saying, yeah, you guys suck at offense. Because we really do. It has not looked pretty. No way to slice it. But also defense, more stuff moving up. We're still 7 for DVOA, 4th for ESPN's efficiency. But ESPN's Football Power Index has us going up 2 spots for number 2, and also PFF grades all the way up to number 3. And special teams, if we're really curious about that, 5th for PFF, 3rd for DVOA, 2 for FPI, and ESPN's efficiency ratings hates our special teams. Not sure why, but 27th for what it's worth. If anyone has send some stern letters to ESPN saying, give us some love, at least from our special teams ratings. But that's just the basic, just overall areas of where the Bears are ranking. But let's talk about Caleb Williams. And I went through the tape, and because I was like, I really want to just break down the tape before also going into these metrics, because I don't want it to just be stats. I also want to see, does it back up what I saw? And that's where next week, I'm hoping on Monday, we can just do an all 22 live. It would be YouTube only, so sorry for the podcast listeners, just because it's just going to be me watching tape. So that's what I'm going to try to do Monday, is just for all of us on YouTube to just kind of watch tape. And if you listen to the show, feel free to pop on, say hi, and we'll just be watching tape. So nothing formal, just very nonchalant. I'll probably have a drink or something like that, just relaxing. But with Caleb Williams, let's talk a little bit about this, because when you watch the tape, Caleb Williams did struggle. But also, I forgot who it was. Someone mentioned, they're like, yeah, the reason why he struggled later on and he wasn't able to make some of the throws It's because he's getting pelted into the ground. And when you're getting constantly berated out there, it's difficult to stay focused. And like I said, after the review show, I felt like he wasn't really given a chance because of his offensive line. And I backed that up. After watching the tape, yes, there's throws that he could have made. Yes, there's things that he could have done. He could have thrown it more accurately. But still, when we break down the offensive line, yeah, we'll throw blame at them. I'll just tell you that. But anyways, still though, even with his throwing, it's still not acceptable. And not trying to just say that, oh, he's off the hook. Don't worry, he's amazing. His EPA was negative 1.2, which was 30th out of 31st. And when you look at total EPA, he's actually the worst quarterback in the NFL. Negative 2.1 pass EPA, which was 30th out of 31 eligible quarterbacks, but a 0.7 rush EPA. There we go. 14th out of 31 last week. But also when we look at the numbers this current week, he still is doing very similar to what we saw before. He's getting it out quick. This week, it was a lot quicker, but also a little bit shorter. Like we saw, it's more in rhythm, quicker throws, because he also has not completed a pass past 15 yards. But 1.8 air yards per completion, which is actually the fourth shortest. Also 2.59 time to throw, which is the sixth quickest. So yet again, trying to get the ball out quick. Something that is also great, we saw his completion percentage above expectation get better. Last week, he was the worst, which really pointed to him just being a very inaccurate quarterback, to it being slightly better. It's still in the negatives, but negative 3.7 completion percentage above expected, which really pinpoints you should have made some more throws. You should have been able to hit some of those throws. So hopefully we see that just get better and better and better. So technically, progress. Not great, but technically progress. Like we did say, he was running a little bit more in system. So that's why you saw kind of that completion percentage a little bit better. But overall, just there's nothing really to kind of say about it when you look at the deep metrics. Very similar to what we saw last week. You know, really kind of trying to go with the short completions, but really the completions make it, but still 6.9 average intended air yards, but yet again, none of them completing over 15 yards. So that's why the air completed yards is so stinking low. But now, first person on the chopping block that I want to yell at is DeAndre Swift. Because after watching the tape, this is why I was like, I have to do this live, because I'm watching DeAndre Swift and there's multiple times that he's going the wrong way. And yet again, I don't know the play call, but I could tell you that the right side was more open than the left, or there was different areas that he's just not letting the blocks develop. And he's just yes, the blocking is not perfect, but DeAndre Swift is not helping that either. And when you look at this, his rush yards over expected, negative 44 yards. So what does that say? He's not going the right way. He's not helping this whole situation. The run blocking has not been great, but DeAndre Swift has not been great at knowing where to go. And you saw it obviously last week, 14 carries for 18 yards, not great. A big difference though, it did feel like he was going more outside a lot of times. But when you actually look at the chart of where he's running, he was running kind of 50% inside and about 50% outside as well. He really wasn't busting a lot of these to the outside like we saw mostly last game, or the first week one. But when you look at the other metrics, and I said this after it all, I said his efficiency metric is going to be terrible, and it was. So keep in mind, he was the worst last week at a 6.68 efficiency rating. Yet again, efficiency is calculated by taking the total distance a player is traveling on rushing plays as a ball carrier, according to Next Gen Stats, per rushing yards gain. So what this means is you want the lower the number, the more north and south. The higher the number, the more dancing and other things like kind of going back and forth is taking place. Last week, he was the worst at 6.68. This week, 10.65, which, believe it or not, was actually the second worst. But that's not good. That kind of echoes the whole piece of the more the dancing, the more east-west, but not north and south. That's the thing that, I always preach on this show. Run straight. It sounds so basic, but it's just run. But yet again, it's not as simple as that, but still not great. But also I looked at what Khalil Herbert did last year. Last year, his efficiency metric was 3.61. Khalil Herbert's actually always been one of the better running backs when it comes down to efficiency. Then next, so someone might say, well, they're loading the box. That would be false. On 7.14% of the runs, they had eight defenders in the box, which was the second lightest. And I believe last week it was the third lightest amount of looks. So yet again, they're not even loading the box and they're able to stop us. And also, if you're curious about Khalil Herbert, last year it was 31% of his looks he faced in the box. Also, DeAndre Swift, 3.04 seconds behind the line of scrimmage, which was also the fifth worst. Khalil Herbert, 2.76. Yet again, Swift behind the line of scrimmage, east-west, it really just kind of solidifies like, yeah, there's a lot of dancing going on in the backfield. And then also a whopping negative 3.41 rushing yards over expected per attempt, which was the worst across the NFL. Yet again, just kind of adding into NFL Next Gen stats are saying, hey, we expect him to be getting a whole 3.5 yards more. And if you think about it, if you do the math and you go back and say, wait, how many yards did he run for? And you flip it over, well, 14 carries for 18 yards, right? Add 44 to that. That's over 4 yards a carry. That is another big thing, is that I think we all want to poke fun at the offensive line. And like I said, when watching the offensive line, they made mistakes, which we'll talk about the offensive line. But Swift isn't helping either. So it's a team group suck event. Like, that's really how it's been. And that's where also, I guess you could feel some optimism because everyone's not doing as great as you should. So, but yeah, ultimately, advanced metrics back it up. And also, just when you watch the tape, Swift has not been doing too great. And I forgot to actually mention this because now I can actually kind of show some of the, I actually want to show some of the PFF grades. Because when you look at who did the best, the only people that were above average, average being a 60 grade, were Tevin Jenkins at 72.7, Khalil Herbert at 68.7, Travis Homer at 66.3, Coleman Shelton, believe it or not, at 65.6, DJ Moore at 63.8, and Braxton Jones at 61. Those were the only above average according to PFF. Below average, a lot more. Mercedes Lewis at 35, Gerald Everett 41, Caleb at 45, Darnell Wright, horrific. I just got to say, Darnell Wright looked horrific out there at a 49. DeAndre Swift, grades back up. PFF grades back up what Next Gen saw, backed up what I saw, a 50.8, not good. And then Rome Odunze 51.5, Nate Davis 52.2, and Cole Kmet 54.7 with a whopping 17.7 pass block grade because Cole did not look good blocking. He's been a good blocker, but last game it was not good. It was not good at all. So now let's look a little bit more at the receiving, because when you look at the receiving, nothing really kind of stands out. Only real thing is that Rome Odunze was second in average yak over expected or above expectation at 6 yards. So kudos to that. Also, Cole Kmet had 10.5 yards of cushion and also had 4.2 yards of separation at the time of catch when the ball went his way. So good kudos to the wide receivers. I mean, the kudos to some of the wide receivers for getting open. It's always hard to kind of track the actual like true natural separation. The separation that we see out here is at the point of catching. And let me actually see if I can find this. When we look at the other metrics for everyone else, Gerald Everett had about 4 yards. The league average is around that, basically 2.96, so around 3. Rome Odunze was below average. Carter was below average. And DJ Moore was like right at 3.1. So tight ends getting open. And this is what we've kind of talked about. The tight ends should be good weapons because you paid for them. Like, you paid good money for Everett. You paid good money for Kmet. And tight ends can be your best friend. They are mismatched weapons that you have. So why not try to get them more involved? That's all we've been trying to say. But let's go to the offensive line, because somebody has to. We have to talk about this offensive line, where before we get into the numbers, let me just say, it was bad. It was gross. It was terrible film. This is also when I'm watching it going, I want all of y'all to watch this with me, because I'm like, oh my God. Because especially Darnell Wright. Darnell Wright, it might have been one of the worst right tackle games that I've seen. It was terrible. But yet again, does that mean that's Darnell Wright? No. He just had his worst game in his career. Period. It was awful. Like, he was just constantly giving up pressure, and even when they knew what was going on, he was giving up pressure. And if you look across the line, Tevin Jenkins to me looked a little bit lost out there, and you kind of heard it in his locker room where he's like, yeah, we're just doing what we're told. Tevin just seemed to be out of position. And Coleman Shelton, anytime someone's on him, he's being driven right back. And Nate Davis, there's times that Nate Davis, like in the run games, you're just like, dude, what are you doing? But ultimately, Braxton Jones was the best. But I'm not saying that Braxton Jones is a Hall of Famer. I'm not saying Braxton Jones is great. I'm just saying that Braxton Jones was the most consistent. The only thing, though, Braxton does that thing where he lets the defensive lineman kind of go around him. So then Caleb just has to step up, but he's not going to get sacked because he's going behind Caleb. It's not great for Caleb, but it's something that, like, Braxton's technically not giving up a pressure, but it's not great to see on tape because your rookie quarterback has to move up, has to adjust everything. So yeah, just bad grades all around. But if you look deeper at the grades, nobody had nobody had what I gave a green grade to. You saw Tevin Jenkins with a 59.8, Coleman Shelton with the 56.7 pass grade, and Darnell Wright with a whopping 39. Like I said, one of the worst games that I've seen a right tackle play. It reminds me of the back, like, Jamarcus Webb days. So you expect him to get better, right? That's not him. That's not him to play like that. But one of the biggest telling stats was we saw this last time. Our true passing sets, the offensive line stepped up, but not this week. This week, 4 of the 5 were below average when it was in true passing sets. So 56 for Tevin Jenkins, 54.9 for Coleman Shelton, 45 for Nate Davis, and 28.5 for Darnell Wright. What does this mean? When you need to throw the ball, your offensive line is simply was not protecting Caleb. And when I was watching the tape, the big thing too is so many of the pressures were coming off of just like stunts. And also too, Shane Waldron, if you're listening, keep a running back there. Enough of this empty backfield, empty sets. Why? Because everybody knows to just blitz rookie quarterbacks because the game is too fast for them. And there's so many times that, like, anytime that they went with an empty set, Houston's like, all right, blitz. And then they blitz. And what do you know? Caleb's under pressure. Caleb's under duress because Caleb's not trying to get the ball out. He's seeing ghosts. He's being attacked. So because of that, keep a running back there. Keep Travis Homer. Keep Roshan Johnson. Keep somebody that can be that person where inevitably, if your offensive line misses somebody, you have a running back there that can block them. That was something that was really frustrating because anytime they went with the empty, it's like, oh boy, here come the dogs. They're coming after Caleb. But also, when you look at the efficiency rating, basically everybody sucked. Everybody was bad. Darnell Wright had a 92.6% efficiency rating. Terrible. Coleman Shelton, 97.9, which is bad at the center position. Tevin Jenkins and Nate Davis, both around 95%. Not great. Braxton Jones, 96.8, which isn't great, but it's not good either. It leans on that bad sort of spectrum. But then when you look at the run grade, lots of okay run grades out there. Braxton Jones having the worst at 57.5. But still, we love running it to the left side for some odd reason. Maybe it's because of Tevin Jenkins with his 76.1 run grade, because we know that he's good at run blocking. But then we have Nate Davis and Darnell Wright on the right-hand side. Try to run it to the right more. That's what we were saying last week. They kept on always running it to the left. There was even some run plays, like I mentioned with Swift. Swift should have been going to the right, and it was kind of this, you don't know the exact play call, but it's one of those weird shotgun snaps where they hand it to him, and it looks like he's going to go right. He cuts back left, gets stopped for negative yards. But ultimately, when you watch the run blocking on tape, like there was a couple times where Nate Davis, Darnell Wright are doing a combo block, so blocking the same person. And when they get to the next level, you expect Darnell Wright to move off and get off of his guy. but he just simply didn't. And that's where, when you're watching them, it's a lot of coaching, it's a lot of playing together, which they didn't really have a lot of snaps to do together. But at the same time, Nate Davis, you played with Darnell Wright. And Tevin Jenkins, you played with Braxton Jones. So is Coleman Shelton really that big of a difference? That's where, Chris Morgan, what are you doing? Now, as the new run game coordinator, something just clearly is not clicking with this team. But let's finish off the offensive line with a little bit of talking about where they're actually ranked. So if you look at ESPN's win rates, so yet again, win rates are different than efficiency numbers, because efficiency numbers kind of factor in sacks and they don't necessarily Justin Fields is a perfect example. Justin Fields held onto the ball for a long time. So because of that, the natural efficiency numbers for offensive linemen were down, but some of their grades were higher because they can block well, they can win well, but then the person gets by them. ESPN, they're saying with their advanced metrics and win rates, Bears are 30th in pass block win rate. This is between 2 weeks. This is not just last week. Between 2 weeks, they are 30th in pass block win rate at 43%. And for run block win rate, they are 17th with 72%. So what this shows, run blocking, like we've said, has been okay. It's been solid, but they could get better, definitely, because this is a good run. This should be a good run blocking unit. Nate Davis, say what you will, his best thing is his run blocking. Yet again, we have Darnell Wright, we have Tevin Jenkins, we have Braxton Jones. We should be able, and also Coleman Shelton is a better run blocker than pass blocker. We shouldn't be 17th. We should be higher. So that's where 17th to me is not good. So that needs to be higher, and obviously being the 30th in pass block win rate needs to be higher as well. But that's enough offensive talk. Let's talk defensive line, where the defensive line still kings, 63% pass rush win rate, and which is good for number 1 and number 2 in run stop win rate at 35%. So even though that the offensive line's been terrible, defensive line has been a pleasant surprise. So if you want to cling to something happy, look at the defensive line. And when you look at them too, Montez Sweat led the way in PFF win percentage at 17.9%. Andrew Billings at 14.3%, Austin Booker 12.5%, DeMarcus Walker at 12.1%, Jervon at 7.4%, and PFF doesn't like Darrell Taylor at 0%. But also, Darrell Taylor, I felt like didn't have what he did last week. Obviously, last week he was unbelievable. But when you look at this too, something I want to point out, Andrew Billings, 91.5 true pass set grade. So when they know that it's going to be a pass, Andrew Billings, the big man, the nose tackle, 91.5 PFF grade, which is elite at pass rush. So also I watched a lot of Andrew Billings tape, and man, he had, like I said, we gave him the game ball for a reason. He was really good. He was really, really good. But also another thing that we can just kind of talk about too, when it comes down to the defensive line, let's talk about win rates from the ESPN perspective. So ESPN win rates different, obviously, than the PFF win rates. And when we look at them, defensive tackles, we are still king. We have DeMarcus Walker at the number 2 spot with a pass rush win rate of 30% over 2 weeks, according to ESPN's. Yet again, ESPN, PFF, they have their separate win rates altogether, and they have DeMarcus Walker being doubled 57% of the time. Andrew Billings, number 3 in pass rush win rate at 26% at a 66% double team rate. And then also Jervon Dexter, 21% pass rush win rate according to ESPN, and a 61% being double teamed, so number 5. So 3 of the top 5, I'll take it, right? Especially since we had questions on the interior. To see that, excellent. Darrell Taylor, though, also dropped all the way down to number 6 with a 31% pass rush win rate and only a 15% double team rate. So ultimately, Darrell Taylor kind of regressing back to the mean, kind of where we expect him to be, but still, to me, looked pretty darn good. So overall, defensive line, bravo. They just keep performing, keep doing well. And that's that's what's really kind of made this defense a true top 5 unit. I was not expecting them to play like a top 5 unit, but they are. They truly are. And you only allowed 19 points to the Houston Texans. But also, when we talk about the Houston Texans, there was one thing that they were able to do very well, and that was pass the ball on Tyreek Stevenson. And when we look at the defense and we look at the worst grades out there, Austin Booker actually had the worst at 37.6. Then Tyreek Stevenson's grade was 41.5. Jalen Johnson also makes the list below average at 54.6. And TJ Edwards, they really liked his run defense at 77.5, but a 42.2 coverage grade. And then if you flip over to the best, Jack Sanborn, only 11 snaps though, 91.2, an elite grade. Then Jaquan Brisker at an 80.5, same thing with Andrew Billings. Then you have Kyler Gordon at 75.1, Tremaine Edmonds up there at 73.7, Montez Sweat 73.1, and Walker at 71.8. Just the more that I watch Walker, that like he's becoming quickly one of my favorites just because he's just enjoyable. Like it's great to see him in a position that he can thrive. Like we've said, when he can play that interior position, he's so good. And he's just playing with confidence and he's playing at a very, very high level. But let's talk a little bit more about the coverage piece, because when you look at the coverage snaps, yet again, coverage very hard to kind of pinpoint as how much separation. But when you look at some of these numbers, PFF did not like the linebackers' coverage grades. 42.2, like we said, for TJ Edwards, 57.7 with Tremaine Edmonds. But yet again, the big thing that we look at with these linebackers is average depth of target. Tremaine Edmonds averaging average depth of target 6 yards and also 5.3 for TJ Edwards. Yet again, the attempts are middle of the field. Last week, a lot of them were behind the line of scrimmage or at the line of scrimmage. So that's why kind of downgrades with some of those. But ultimately, TJ Edwards being targeted 3 of 3 for 44 yards. So that's big thing that we ended up seeing. And also yards after the catch at 28. So yards are happening after the catch. Not great to see out there. And an NFL rating of 158.3 when TJ Edwards was targeted. Then you flip over to the cornerbacks and the defensive backs. Tyreek Stevenson targeted 10 times for 7 receptions. Yeah, we kind of knew that. Heavily targeted, not great. But Jalen Johnson targeted 5 times, only allowed 2 catches. So I think the 52.4 for me was a little harsh on him. But also, it's nice to see Kyler Gordon with a good grade. 4 targets for 2 receptions. But at the same time, I think when you watch the tape and you also look at the numbers, the thing that this tells me, the story that this says, is this is very similar to what we thought about Tyreek Stevenson last year. And I think that a lot of this is still true this year. First off, coverage, that's volatile. You know that that's going to be volatile. You know there's going to be ups. You know that there's going to be downs. But just the player that Tyreek Stevenson is, he does have those volatile tendencies. They decided to go after him. Also, they decided to point a finger in Nico Collins' face, which also probably pissed him off a little bit, which also made you poke the bear and the bear got you. So Tyreek Stevenson down week, but had a very good week last week. Yet again, going against very, very good wide receivers out there, that's what's going to happen to you. So now going against the Colts, they have some good wide receivers that he's going to be going against, but not to the tier of Nico Collins and Stephon Diggs. So overall, let's put this week behind us. And hopefully the Bears can go 1-1 in the next 2 weeks, like we said, because as long as you go 2-2 in the first 4 weeks, there's still a plan. There's still a way to make the playoffs if you are the Chicago Bears. So don't hang your heads too much. We got lots of awesome shows. Tomorrow, we will be live breaking down the Chicago Bears versus the Indianapolis Colts. So make sure to like and subscribe if you're out there on YouTube. Also, rate the show 5 stars everywhere that you get your podcast. You can download it everywhere. Just search for Unbearable Sports. And with that, hope you all have a fantastic night. And Unbearable Sports Podcast, we are out.
Yeah, she's got some nice long hair and you know that she's a